Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at Caesar and Pompey by George Chapman, not to be confused with a university play. Also, one of its titles could be Caesar and Pompey, otherwise called Caesar's Revenge, which is a better title anyway.
Okay.
This is the Chapman, Caesar and Pompey, dating sometime in the early 17th century. No one is really sure. So any time between 1599 and 1631 is its date range. Please stick a pin where you personally like it to go. Relatively early in the century or much later on. We don't even know. According to Chapman, it wasn't actually even performed within that date range when it gets published in, I think, 1633. He complains it was never actually performed. But there is a later reference after the, or mid, I think, yes, midway through the interregnum, that it was performed at some point. So maybe after it was printed, someone took pity on him and put it on. I don't know. But we will find out how the play functions, regardless of whether it was performed or who performed it or how it was performed or when it was performed, to whoever who may or may not have seen it. So reading today, Caesar and Cilicia is...
Hey, I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from the northwest of the United States.
Reading Metellus, Gabinius, and a Master is...
Irene, I'm coming to you from Greece, from an island in the Ionian Sea.
Reading First Citizen and Pompey is...
Mark in the Midwest United States.
And we'll see how great you are. Reading Portius, Fourth Citizen, First Consul, Vibius, and Demetrius is...
Hi, I'm Lynn. This is Scooter. We're coming to you from, we're not looking neighbors with Aaron, but we're pretty close, northwestern United States.
Reading Athenodorus, Fronto, and Brutus is...
Aliki in Athens.
Joining us to be Cato and Crassinius is...
Sarah in Germany.
Reading Statilius, Fifth Citizen Senators, Antony, and Ophioneus.
Lois in London.
Reading Third Citizen, Second Consul, Nuntius, Iberia, and Thrace is...
Connor in London.
And reading Minutius, Sixth Citizen, Acilius is...
Alan, in a tiny box in Suffolk.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions, and I might leap in to be a random king or citizen later on, depending on how the flow goes. But without further ado, we will go into the opening of Act 1, Scene 1. There's no recorded prologue, but we do have the entrance of Cato, Athenodorus, Portius, and Statilius.
Now will the two sons of our Roman heaven, Pompey and Caesar, in their tropic burning, with their contention all the clouds assemble that threaten tempest to our peace and empire, which we shall shortly see pour down in blood, civil and natural, wild and barbarous turning.
From whence presaged you this?
From both their armies, now gathered near our Italy, contending to enter severally. Pompey's brought so near by Rome's consent for fear of tyrannous Caesar, which Caesar, fearing to be done in favour of Pompey and his passage to the empire, hath brought on his for intervention. And such a flock of buttocks follows Caesar, for fallings of his ill-disposed purse that never yet spared cross to aquiline virtue, as well may make all civil spirits suspicious. Look how, against great rains, a standing pool of paddocks, toads, and water snakes put up their speckled throats above the venomous lake, croaking and gasping for some fresh fallen drops to quench their poisoned thirst, being near to stifle with clotted purgings of their own foul bane. So still, where Caesar goes, there thrust up head impostors, flatterers, favourites, and bawds, buffoons, intelligences, select wits, close murtherers, mountebanks, and decayed thieves, to gain their baneful lives reliefs from him. From Britain, Belgia, France, and Germany, the scum of either country, choosed by him to be his blackguard and red agents here, swarming about him.
And all these are said to be suborned in chief against yourself, since Caesar chiefly fears that you will sit this day his opposite. In the case for which both you were sent for home, and he hath stolen access so soon here, Pompey's whole rest raised to the encounter, and on both sides Rome in general uproar.
Which, sir, if you saw and knew how for the danger all suspect to this your worthiest friend, for that known freedom his spirit will use this day against both the rivals, his wife and family mourn, no food, no comfort allowed them for his danger, you would use your utmost powers to stay him from the Senate all this day's session.
He's too wise, Statilius, for all is nothing.
Nothing, sir. I saw Castor and Pollux temple thrust up full with all the damned crew you have lately named, the marketplace and suburbs swarming with them. And where the Senate sit are ruffians pointed to keep from entering the degrees that go up to the bench, all other but the consuls, Caesar and Pompey and the senators. And all for no cause but to keep out Cato with any violence, any villainy. And is this nothing, sir? Is his one life, on whom all good lives and their goods depend in Rome's whole empire, all the justice there that's free and simple, all such virtues too, and all such knowledge? Nothing? Nothing, all?
Away, Statilius. How long shall thy love exceed thy knowledge of me and the gods, whose rights thou wrongst for my right? Have not I their powers to guard me in a cause of theirs? Their justice and integrity included in what I stand for? He that fears the gods, for God any goodness, all things fears. Earth, seas and air, heaven, darkness, broad daylight, rumour and silence, and his very shade. And what an aspen soul hath such a creature? How dangerous to his soul is such a fear? In whose cold fits is all heaven's justice shaken to his faint thoughts, and all the goodness there due to all good men by the gods' own vows, nay, by the firmness of their endless being, all which shall fail as soon as any one good to a good man in them, for his goodness proceeds from them and is a beam of theirs. Nevermore, Statilius, may this fear taint thy whole bosom for thyself or friend, more than the gods are fearful to defend.
Come, let him go, Statilius, and your fright. This man hath inward guard past your young sight.
And exit Portius, Athenodorus, Statilius. Enter Minutius to Cato.
Welcome. Come stand by me in what is fit for our poor city's safety, nor respect her proudest foe's corruption, or our danger of what seen face soever.
Yours. But what, alas, sir, can the weakness do against our whole state, of us only two? You know our statist spirits are so corrupt and servile to the greatest, that what crosseth them, or their own particular wealth or honour, it will not enterprise to save the empire.
I know it. Yet let us do like ourselves.
And exit them both. End of scene. Okay, that was throwing some imagery around, wasn't it? It wasn't just, oh, here's a little similar thing. It's just, no, I am going to beat this concept onto the ground in front of you for quite a while. But I have to say, I was going with it. Because it was speaking to the emotional state of what the characters were talking about, as well as plot, and yeah, in terms of setting up characters and offstage characters, it seemed to be doing, in a relatively short space of time, it's not a long scene, a lot of interesting work. Thoughts in the room on that, Lois?
Well, it's certainly telling us which side to be on.
Well, you know, from their point of view, we should be on their side. Of course, we may decide that they're terrible people and we don't want to be involved. I mean, the prologue hasn't given us any clues. We didn't have one. Who's for Team Cato? Lynn.
Yeah, maybe it's just it's early in the morning here. Maybe I'm not quite awake. But I'm having a really hard time following the syntax. But that's Chapman. I think that's pretty characteristic.
Chapman.
So yeah, I think maybe a good actor with some study could, make it clear. But at this point, I'm finding just the language quite hard to follow.
Anyone else on that? I was actually carried along with it surprisingly well. Actually, I was expecting that from reading it, but Lois.
Yeah, I just noticed in the chat that Mark's asking who is the worthiest friend, and that seems to be relevant to the syntax question. Yeah, I think Statilius is telling Athenodorus to persuade his friend Cato not to go to the Senate. But the fact that this is obscure is sort of an example, I suppose, of the difficulty of the text. Although it wouldn't be in performance, it would be obvious what he was talking about.
Alan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether the convoluted syntax is due to it being more Latinate than English in terms of the construction.
Possibly. I couldn't say. Mark.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of descriptions of like Caesar's followers, but not much of like how they feel about Pompey. So I'll be interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that, Cato's got some thoughts about some of these people. They've got thoughts about these people. The terrible people, all the animal imagery they're throwing in there. I mean, it's fairly unambiguous, I think, on what he thinks of them. Lois.
Yeah, there is something rather curious. I mean, if you are determined to make up your own mind rather than listen to all the animal imagery, I mean, what you're told at the beginning is that Pompey has brought his army to Rome for fear of Caesar's army, and Caesar, being annoyed at this, has brought up his army. So, I mean, whose fault is this anyway?
Mark.
Well, and Cato said it's by Rome's consent that Pompey has brought his army, but he doesn't really clarify, like, he means like the Senate in general. Is it like a pretty unanimous decision? Is there dissent among that consent? I don't know.
Yes, I mean, who really wants the army to march on Rome? Does anyone ever really go, yay, more soldiers? As opposed to Lynn.
There was a reason that there was a law that said the army wasn't allowed in the city, There's reason for that.
Yeah. Okay, let's gather more data with more characters. We've had a little faction having a little natter. Act 1, Scene 2. Enter some bearing axes, bundles of rods bear before two consuls, Caesar and Metellus, Antony and Marcellus in couples, senators, people and soldiers, etc. following. The consuls enter with the degrees with Antony and Marcellus, Caesar standing a while without with Metellus, who hath a paper in his hand.
Move you for entering only Pompey's army, which if you gain for him, for me all justice will join with my request of entering mine.
'Tis like so, and I propose to enforce it.
But might we not win Cato to our friendship, by honoring speeches nor persuasive gifts?
Not possible.
Nor by enforcive usage?
Not all the violence that can be used of power or set authority can stir him. Much less fair words win or rewards corrupt him. And therefore all means we must use to keep him from all the bench.
Give you the course for that. Give you the course for that. And if he offer entry, I have fellows will serve your will on him at my given signal.
They ascend. Enter Pompey, Gabinius, Vibius, Demetrius with papers. Enter the lists, ascend and sit. After whom enter more people. You need a big stage for this one. Enter Cato, Minutius, Athenodorus, Statilius, and Portius.
He is the man that sits so close to Caesar and holds the law there, whispering, "See, The coward hath guards of armed men got against one naked. I'll part their whispering virtue.
Hold! Keep out!
What honoured Cato? Enter, choose thy place.
Come in.
He draws with him in and sits betwixt Caesar and Metellus.
Away, unworthy grooms.
No more!
What should one say to him?
He will be stoical.
Where fit place is not given, it must be taken.
Do take it, Cato. Fear no greatest of them. Thou seekest the people's good, and these their own.
Brave Cato! What a countenance he puts on. Let's give his noble will our utmost power.
Be bold in all thy will, for being just, thou mayst defy the gods.
Said like a god.
We must endure these people.
Do begin.
Consuls and reverend fathers, and ye people whose voices are the voices of the gods, I here have drawn a law, by good consent, for entering into Italy the army of Rome's great Pompey, that his forces here, as well as he, great Rome, may rest secure from danger of the yet still smoking fire of Catiline's abhorred conspiracy, for which the very chief are left alive, only chastised, but with a gentle prison.
We'll put them to death, then, and strike dead our fear, that well you urge by their unfit survival, rather than keep it quick, and 2 lives give it by entertaining Pompey's army too, that gives as great cause of our fear as they. For their conspiracy only was to make one tyrant over all the state of Rome, and Pompey's army suffered to be entered is to make him, or give him means to be so.
It follows not.
In purpose clearly, sir, which I'll illustrate with clear example. If it be day, the sun's above the earth, which follows not, you'll answer, for 'tis day when first the morning breaks, and yet is then the body of the sun beneath the earth. But he is virtually above it too, because his beams are there. And who then knows not, his golden body will soon after mount. So Pompey's army entered Italy. Yet Pompey's not in Rome, but Pompey's beams, who sees not there? And consequently he is in all means enthroned in the empery.
Examples prove not. We will have the army of Pompey entered.
We? Which we intend you? Have you already bought the people's voices? Or bear our consuls or our senate here so small love to their country, that their wills beyond their country's right are so perverse to give a tyrant here entire command? Which I have proved as clear as day they do. If either the conspirators surviving be let to live, or Pompey's army entered, both which beat one sole path and threaten one danger.
Consuls and honoured fathers, the sole entry of Pompey's army I'll not yet examine. But for the great conspirators yet living, which Cato will conclude as one self-danger to our dear country, and deter all, therefore, that love their country from their lives' defence, I see no reason why such danger hangs on their saved lives, being still safe kept in prison. And since close prison to a Roman freedom tenfold torments more than directest death, who can be thought to love the less his country, that seeks to save their lives? And lest myself, thus speaking for them, be unjustly touched with any less doubt of my country's love, why, reverend fathers, may it be esteemed self-praise in me to prove myself a chief, both in my love of her and in desert of her, like love in me. For he that does most honour to his mistress well may boast, without least question, that he loves her most. And though things long since done were long since known, and so may seem superfluous to repeat, yet being forgotten, as things never done, their repetition needful is, in justice to inflame the shame of that oblivion. For hoping it will seem no less impair to others' acts to truly tell mine own, put all together, I have passed them all that by their acts can boast themselves to be their country's lovers. First, in those wild kingdoms subdued to Rome by my unwearied toils, which I dissavaged and made nobly civil. Next, in the multitude of those rude realms that so I fashioned, and to Rome's young empire of old have added. Then the battles numbered, this hand hath fought and won for her, with all those infinites of dreadful enemies I slew in them. Twice 1,500,000, all able soldiers, I have driven at once before my forces, and in sundry onsets 1,000,000 of them put to sword. Besides, I took in less than 10 years' time by strong assault above 800 cities, 300 several nations in that space, subduing to my country, all which service I trust may interest me in her love. Public and general enough to acquit me of any self-love past her common good, for any motion of particular justice, by which her general empire is maintained, that I can make for those accused prisoners, which is but by the way, that so the reason Metellus makes for entering Pompey's army may not more weighty seem than to agree with those imprisoned nobles' vital safeties, which granted or but yielded fit to be, may well extenuate the necessity of entering Pompey's army.
All that need I took away before, and reasons gave for a necessity to keep it out, whose entry I think he himself affects not, since I as well think he affects not the empire, and both those thoughts hold, since he loves his country, in my great hopes of him, too well to seek his sole rule of her, when so many souls so hard a task approve it. Nor my hopes of his sincere love to his country build on sandier grounds than Caesar's, since he can as good cards show for it as Caesar did, and quit therein the close aspersion of his ambition, seeking to employ his army in the breast of Italy.
Let me not thus, imperial bench and senate, feel myself beat about the ears and tossed with others' breaths to any coast they please, and not put some stay to my errors in them. The gods can witness that not my ambition hath brought to question the entry of my army, and therefore not suspected the effect of which that entry is supposed to cause, which is a will in me to give my power the rule of Rome's sole empire, that most strangely would put my will in others' powers, and powers, unforfeit by my fault, in others' wills. My self-love, out of which all this must rise, I will not wrong the known proofs of my love to this my native country's public good to quit or think of, nor repeat those proofs, confirmed in those 3 triumphs I have made for conquest of the whole inhabited world, first Afric, Europe, and then Asia, which never consul but myself could boast. Nor can blind fortune vavint her partial hand in any part of all my services. The some have said she was the page of Caesar, both sailing, marching, fighting, and preparing his fights in very order of his battles. The parts she played for him, inverting nature as giving calmness to the enraged sea, imposing summer's weather on stern winter, winging the slowest foot he did command, and his most coward making fierce of hand. And all this ever when the force of man was quite exceeded in it all, and she in the instant adding her clear deity. Yet her for me I both disclaim and scorn, and where all fortune is renounced, no reason will think one man transferred with affectation of all Rome's empire, for he must have fortune. That goes beyond a man, and where so many their handfuls find with it, the one is mad that undergoes it, and where that is clear to the imputed means to it which is my suit, for entry of mine army I confute.
What rests then, this of all parts being disclaimed?
My part, sir, rests that, let great Pompey bear what spirit he lists, 'tis needful yet for Rome that this law be established for his army.
'Tis then as needful to admit in mine, or else let both lay down our arms. For else to take my charge off and leave Pompey his, you wrongfully accuse me to intend a tyranny amongst ye, and shall give Pompey full means to be himself a tyrant.
Can this be answered?
Is it then your wills that Pompey shall cease arms?
What else?
No.
No.
Shall Caesar cease his arms?
Aye,
Aye.
For shame. Then yield to this clear equity that both may leave their arms.
We indifferent
We
stand.
indifferent stand.
Read but this law, and you shall see a difference twixt equity and your indifferency. All men's objections answered. Read it, notary.
He shall not read it.
I will read it then.
Nor shalt thou read it, being a thing so vain, pretending cause for Pompey's army's entry, that only by thy accomplices and thee 'tis forged to set the Senate in an uproar.
He snatches the bill.
I have it, sir, in memory, and will speak it.
Thou shalt be dumb as soon.
Pull down this Cato, author of factions, and to prison with him.
He draws, and all draw.
Come down, sir.
Hence, you mercenary ruffians!
Outrage show you. Sheathe your insolent swords, or be proclaimed your country's foes and traitors.
How insolent a part was this in you, to offer the imprisonment of Cato when there is rights in him, were form so answered with terms in place to send us both to prison. If of our own ambitions we should offer the entry of our armies, for who knows that of us both the best friend to this country and freest from his own particular ends, being in his power, would not assume the empire, and having it, could rule the state so well as now 'tis governed for the common good.
Accuse yourself, sir, if your conscience urge it, or of ambition, or corruption, or insufficiency to rule the empire, and sound not me with your lead.
Lead? 'Tis gold. Spirit of gold, too, to the politic dross with which false Caesar sounds men.
This is all wrong. Sorry, but that can't be Caesar speaking.
Okay, well, we'll look into that.
Why are the speeches attributed thus?
I cannot say at this precise moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shall we read to the end of the scene and
okay,
see if
yeah. But I think the speech actually will show you that it can't be Caesar. I mean, just by the end of it, even. Yeah.
Well, we're in Pompey at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's supposed to. Isn't that Pompey speaking? Oh,
we're in the middle of Pompey speaking, aren't we?
Oh God, sorry. I thought it was Caesar speaking.
No, we're in Pompey at the moment.
Oh, okay, right. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah.
Wrong faction.
Right, yeah.
Pompey, continue.
Right.
Lead, 'tis gold, and spirit of gold too, to the politic dross with which false Caesar sounds men, and for which his praise and honor crowns them. Who sounds not the inmost sand of Caesar? For but sand is all the rope of your great parts affected. You speak well, and are learned, and golden speech did nature never give man, but to gild a copper soul in him. And all that learning that heartily is spent in painting speech is merely painted, no solid knowledge. But you have another praise for temperance, which not commends your free choice to be temperate, for so you must be, at least in your meals, since you have a malady that ties you to it for fear of daily falls in your aspirings. And your disease the gods ne'er gave to man, but such a one as had a spirit too great for all his body's passages to serve it, which notes the excess of your ambition. The malady chancing where the pores and passages through which the spirit of a man is born so narrow are and straight that oftentimes they intercept it quite and choke it up. Yet because the greatness of it notes a heat more fleshly and of blood's rank fire, goats are of all beasts subjected to it most.
Yourself might have it then, if those faults cause it. But deals this man ingenuously to tax men with a frailty that the gods inflict?
The gods inflict on men diseases never or other outward maims, but to decipher, correct in order some rude vice within them. And why decipher they it but to make men note and shun and tax it to the extreme? Nor will I see my country's hopes abused in any man commanding in her empire, if my more trial of him makes me see more into his intricacies, and my freedom hath spirit to speak more than observers servile.
Be free, sir, of your insight and your speech, and speak and see more than the world besides. I must remember I have heard of one that fame gave out could see through oak and stone, and of another set in Sicily that could discern the Carthaginian navy, and number them distinctly leaving harbour, though full a day and night's sail distant thence. But these things, reverend fathers, I conceive hardly appear to you worth grave belief. And therefore, since such strange things have been seen in my so deep and foul detractions, by only Lyncian Pompey, who was most loved and believed of Rome, most famous whore, infamous Flora, by so fine a man as Galba or Surmentus, any jester or flatterer may draw through a lady's ring, but one that all his soldiers call in scorn great Agamemnon or the king of men, I rest unmoved with him, and yield to you to right my wrongs or his abuse allow.
My lords, ye make all Rome amazed to hear.
Away, I'll hear no more. I hear it thunder. My lords, all you that love the good of Rome, I charge ye follow me. All such as stay are friends to Caesar and their country's foes.
The event will fall out contrary, my lords.
Go, thou art a thief to Rome. Discharge thine army, or be proclaimed forthwith her open foe.
Pompey, I charge thee, help thy injured country with what powers thou hast on hand, and levy more.
War! War!
War,
Oh,
war.
Caesar!
Peace, peace, worthy Pompey.
Can we have all the Senate and the people just do that all together now?
Peace,
Peace!
Worthy Pompey, lovely, excellent. End of act, end of scene. Okay, there's a lot. I'm thinking back to the wounds of civil war. Big Senate scene. Everybody's got knives. Everybody's got weapons. Everyone's come tooled up to the Senate for a situation with this big Mexican standoff of two armies it's nicely complicated, actually. I like the fact that actually we were talking about in the first scene, oh, well, we know which side Cato's on and all the rest of it. But actually, the political situation here is more complex than that. And Pompey's really losing the moral high ground by just by what he's saying about Caesar, just going, well, you're not fit to rule because you're likely to have an epileptic fit, and he's going, whoa, dude, that's not cool. So there's some really interesting things going on in this, and of course, remember, this is a big scene with everybody on stage as well. So even though we've got these massive speeches, there's lots of other stuff going on around it. Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, I personally find Pompey's ableism quite distasteful, but I mean, I think at the time he was articulating a view that was not unique to him, that physical infirmity was taken by many people to be a sign of unfitness. So, I mean, it's gross, but and
Pompey does get the Caesar does get a response to it. He does get to there is a back and forth. It's not presented as it's a thing that that these characters do, and it gives us a chance to judge them, which is interesting. Lois.
Well, it's sort of something the gods inflict on you, but then why do they inflict it on you? Because you deserve it, because you're so awful. I think that's Pompey's argument. I think to a modern ear, even the argument about what should be done with the people that were imprisoned for being involved in Catiline's conspiracy, Cato says, execute them all. That'll take care of the problem. And Caesar's view is, they're in prison and, being Romans, imprisonment would be horrible to them. Let's leave them in prison. I mean, he does I think he is seen as arguing the merciful case in Johnson's Catiline as well. And in both cases, it's seen as being political and for reasons of his own. But, again, to a modern listener, the dislike of the death penalty is more sympathetic.
It is interesting, actually, just sort of the way that these arguments are flashing back and forth, and the effects that has. Alan.
I've just been listening to yesterday in Parliament.
I think, to be fair, nobody's come tooled up yet, but there's still time. But we have that moment. Everybody pulls their weapons, and suddenly we have that going on. Aaron.
Well, but I mean, Caesar drew first, right? like that it says he draws and then everybody else draws against him. And I think they are complicating it, but to me the moment that jumped out was when I loved when they said, should Caesar stand down? Yeah, Caesar should totally stand down. Well, should Pompey stand down? Also, no, you shouldn't. No, Pompey shouldn't stand down. He's the one helping. Like, I think they are still definitely picking a side, but they're also, I think it somehow they're also making Caesar look like the underdog. Like they're making it look like there's something suspicious about how Pompey has so much support, and that to be so unfair to Caesar is undermining everybody's argument about how Caesar's the one causing the problem. Because they want to restrict Caesar, but they don't want to put the same restriction on Pompey, and that's even striking them as weird, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, basically by allowing these two camps to exist simultaneously, they are kind of asking for this thing to go very badly wrong. And oh look, it's just gone horribly badly wrong. War. So yeah, we've got the setup, and I quite like the dual setup. We have this relatively short scene where we have, in theory, incorruptible Cato in the stating his opinions, and then we get the big scene. So you get a sort of ease in, and it's it helps obviously if you know about Catiline conspiracy and that sort of information, and maybe we throw a prologue in, but it does feed most of the information to the audience in a relatively fluid way. I'm not saying it's still easy to get everything across. It's still tricky. But the play is doing the legwork, I think. I don't think it's bamboozling us. It could, but I don't think it has made some effort. Okay, other thoughts? Otherwise, we'll go into Act 2. Bad things going down. Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Fronto, all ragged, in an overgrown red beard, black head, and a halter in his hand, looking about.
Wars and presses fly and fire about. No more can I lurk in my lazy corners, nor shifting courses, and with honest means to rack my miserable life out more. The rack is not so fearful. When dishonest and villainous fashions fail me, can I hope to live with virtuous, or to raise my fortunes by creeping up in soldierly degrees, since villainy, varied thorough all his figures, will put no better case on me than this. Despair comes seize me. I had able means, and spent all in the swinge of lewd affections, plunged all in all riot and the rage of blood, in full assurance that being knave enough, barbarous enough, base, ignorant enough, I needs must have enough while this world lasted. Yet, since I am a poor and ragged knave, my rags disgrace my knavery, so that none will think I am a knave, as if good clothes were next to know a knave, when all men know he has no living, which next, since my knavery can show no more, and only show is all that this world cares for, I'll step out of all the cares 'tis steeped in.
He offers to hang himself. Thunder and the gulf opens, flames issuing, and Ophioneus ascending with the face, wings, and tail of a dragon, a skin coat all speckled on the throat.
Oh, rascal, hang thyself in these days, the only time that ever was for a rascal to live in.
Perchance I cannot live then.
Either thou art not rascal nor villain enough, or else thou dost not pretend honesty and piety enough to disguise it.
Oh, that's certain. Every ass does that. What art thou?
A villain worse than thou.
And dost breathe?
I speak, thou hearest. I move, my pulse beats fast as thine.
And wherefore livest thou?
The world's out of frame, 1,000 rulers wresting it this way and that, with as many religions. When as heaven's upper sphere is moved only by one, so should the sphere of earth be, and I'll have it so.
How canst thou? What art thou?
My shape may tell thee.
No man.
Man, no, spawn of a clot, none of that cursed crew, damned in the mass itself, plagued in his birth, confined to creep below and wrestle with the elements, teach himself tortures, kill himself, hang himself, no such galley slave, but at war with heaven, spurning the power of the gods, commanding the elements.
What mayest thou be then?
An endless friend of thine, an immortal devil.
Bless us.
Nay, then forth, go hang thyself, and thou talk'st of heaven once.
I have done. What devil art thou?
Read the old Stoic Pherecydes that tells thee me truly, and says that I, Ophioneus, for so is my name.
Ophioneus, what's that?
A devilish serpent by interpretation, was general captain of that rebellious host of spirits that waged war with heaven.
And so were hurled down to hell.
We were so, and yet have the rule of earth. And cares any man for the worst of hell then?
Why should he?
Well said. What's thy name now?
My name's Fronto.
Fronto. A good one. And has Fronto lived thus long in Rome, lost his state at dice, murdered his brother for his means, spent all, run through worse offices since, been a promoter, a purveyor, a pander, a summoner, a sergeant, an intelligencer, and at last hang thyself?
How the devil knows he all this?
Why, thou art a most green plover in policy, I perceive, and mayest drink colt's foot for all thy horse mane beard. Slight, what need hast thou to hang thyself, as if there were a dearth of hangmen in the land? Thou livest in a good, cheap state. A man may be hanged here for a little or nothing. What's the reason of thy desperation?
My idle, dissolute life is thrust out of all his corners by this searching tumult now on foot in Rome. Caesar, now Pompey, are both for battle. Pompey, in his fear of Caesar's greater force, is sending hence his wife and children, and he bent to fly.
Enter Pompey, running over the stage with his wife and children, Gabinius, Demetrius, Vibius, pages, and other senators and consuls all following.
See? All are on their wings, and all the city in such an uproar as if fire and sword were ransacking and ruining their houses. No idle person now can lurk near Rome. All must to arms, or shake their heels beneath her martial halters, whose officious pride I'll shun, and use mine own swinge. I be forced to help my country, when it forceth me to this past helping pickle.
Go to, thou shalt serve me. Choose thy profession, and what cloth thou wouldst wish to have thy coat cut on.
I can name none.
Shall I be thy learned counsel?
None better.
Be an arch-flamen, then, to one of the gods.
Arch-flamen. What's that?
A priest.
A priest that never was clerk.
No clerk? What then? The greatest clerks are not the wisest men, nor skills it for degrees in a knave or fool's preferment. Thou shalt rise by fortune. Let desert rise leisurely enough and by degrees. Fortune prefers headlong, and comes like riches to a man, huge riches being got with little pains, and with great pains. And for discharge of the priesthood, what thou want'st in learning, thou shalt take out in good fellowship. Thou shalt equivocate with the sophister, prate with the lawyer, scrape with the usurer, drink with the Dutchman, swear with the Frenchman, cheat with the Englishman, brag with the Scot, and turn all this to religion. Hocus regnum deorum dientibius.
Oh, this I can do to a hair.
Very good. Wilt thou show thyself deeply learned too, and to live licentiously here, care for nothing hereafter?
Not for hell?
For hell? Soft, sir. Hopest thou to purchase hell with only dicing or whoring away thy living, murdering thy brother, and so forth? No, there remain works of a higher hand and deeper brain to obtain hell. Think'st thou earth's great potentates have gotten their places there with any single act of murder, poisoning, adultery, and the rest? No, 'tis a purchase for all manner of villainy, especially that may be privileged by authority, colored with holiness, and enjoyed with pleasure.
Oh, this were most honorable and admirable.
Why, such an admirable, honorable villain shalt thou be.
Is't possible?
Make no doubt on't, I'll inspire thee.
Sacred and puissant.
He kneels.
Away, companion and friend, give me thy hand. Say, dost not love me? Art not enamored of my acquaintance?
Protest I am.
Well said, protest and 'tis enough. And know for infallible, I have promotion for thee, both here and hereafter, which not one great one amongst millions shall ever aspire to. Alexander nor great Cyrus retain those titles in hell that they did on earth.
No?
No, he that sold sea coal here shall be a baron there. He that was a cheating rogue here shall be a justice of peace there. A knave here, a knight there. In the mean space, learn what it is to live, and thou shalt have chopines at commandment to any height of life thou canst wish.
I fear my fall is too low.
Too low, fool? Hast thou not heard of Vulcans falling out of heaven? Light are thy legs, and no matter though thou halt'st with thy best friend ever after, 'tis the more comely and fashionable. Better go lame in the fashion with Pompey, though never so upright, quite out of the fashion with Cato.
Yet you cannot change the old fashion, they say, and hide your cloven feet.
No, I can wear roses that shall spread quite over them.
For love of the fashion, do then.
Go to, I will hereafter.
But for the priesthood you offer me, I affect it not.
No? What sayst thou to a rich office, then?
The only second means to raise a rascal in the earth.
Go to. I'll help thee to the best in the earth, then. And that's in Sicilia, the very storehouse of the Romans, where the Lord Chief Censor there now lies a-dying, whose soul I will have, and thou shalt have his office.
Excellent. Was ever great office better supplied?
And exit. And we'll never see them again. What a fascinating random... I mean, it does serve a minor structural purpose of just going, hey, there's a civil war going on over here. And stuff, and it's... but otherwise, it's fascinating. Thoughts from the room on this? I'll go to Lynn, then Aliki, and then Alan.
That was so weird on so many levels. I mean, completely divorced from the plot. I mean, you get the sense you'll never see these two guys again, and like the cosmology or the worldview is like this weird mashup of paganism and Christianity. Like, it's just so weird.
Yeah, Aliki.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like something out of a Vice's play came landing into here. It's like, here's Satan tempting the weak man. Not that he was just weak, he was already quite villainous, killing his brother over a game of dice or something.
For his property.
Yeah, but yeah, it's very peculiar. And it seems to have, Lynn said, a mix of pagan and Christian sentiments, but I don't really see the pagan there at all. It's all like it's full of Satan and Frenchmen and stuff.
Alan, then Lois, then Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, if this was had been written as a playhouse play, you could almost see, right, comic wants his 5-minute stint, here it is. And it seems eminently detachable. And what I think actually work as quite a nice little two-hander.
Yeah, it is odd. I mean, it is a sense. I mean, it's quite a nice palate cleanser to a degree, in the sense of going, it was a very serious Act 1. There was a lot of speechifying. Maybe having a minor demon turn up is quite pleasing. But it is also just such out of left field. And just going, what are we watching now? But that's also what I love about the early modern, is that you get these random about face, just these random what the hell scene just turns up, quite literally. Lois, then Sarah, then Aaron.
Yeah. Yes, it was a surprise to me too, because although I read this play a long time ago, my recollections are really of seeing a Red Not Dead production of it, which was also quite a long time ago. But I know this scene wasn't in it. I think they must have decided that it was totally, as you say, detachable. But it does have, of course, a dumb show, which relates back to the main plot, which may also be put in there because the audience was getting bored at this point. But it seems like a really odd way to put it, an odd place to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like the idea of trying to do something a bit different, to sort of try to say, okay, the Civil War's going on, how do we depict that? Well, we've got this person who's sort of, you know, he can't make his way, or, you know, the Civil War's getting in the way of his suicide attempt. You know, it's all sort of quite random. I find that quite interesting. I'm very disappointed. It's not a very long play, so I'd be very disappointed if they cut it. You know, you should try it out on stage, see what an audience made of it, because I'm really curious to see what an audience would make of this scene in a performance. Sarah, then Aaron.
Yeah, my feeling about this is that, and perhaps this is why they cut it. Not only does it feel like it's just wandered in from another play and then wanders off again, but I can imagine a scenario whereby the audience, this scene happens and the audience is like, oh, wow, we weren't expecting that. This is kind of cool and weird and what's happening here. And then the audience are actually really disappointed that there's never any more of it ever again. And so I can see the temptation to cut it, because you're setting yourself up for, you're setting your audience up for a whole load of expectations that are never going to be met if they don't reappear. But I'm now wondering, I'm going to be looking through the rest of the play now to see if there are places where if you left this scene in, you could actually have them, the pair of them, like appearing in the background somewhere, like wandering across in the back of the stage, you know, or just kind of off to one side and kind of like, you know, looking at the action and kind of commenting on it, because it's such a glorious scene.
Yeah, or that maybe there's different comic business in some of the other acts. You know, maybe the play needs something. You know, but it's a detailed costume. You know, face, wings, tail of a dragon. It's speckled, speckled leather. It's a really detailed thing. Aaron, Lois, then we will need to move on, because I feel this is a tangent on so many different levels. Aaron.
Yeah, I think that it seems to me like it's a weird scene trying to solve a couple of problems. One, we want to have this big explosion of civil war, and we don't have the budget, time, space, equipment to stage an actual battle. So what you get is you get to end that scene with everybody saying, that's it, then it's war. There's a huge special effect. There's some kind of, you know, you get to that crescendo. Things explode. But then you just have people backstage banging swords and screaming at each other, and then these guys come out front. But you get to bring that burst into civil war to fruition, and then out of the smoke steps, you know, what seems to me like a clown dressed as a giant demon. And then you have this weird comic scene, and you needed to give your clown something to do anyway, and then they bring it up, and then they kind of do a little show, make everybody laugh, have a good time, and then they say, and now on with the plot, you know, and by the way, over here, go. But it, you know, I don't know, it seems like it's solving several problems. You need to give the clown something to do, you can't do the battle, so it just kind of, it's functional. It doesn't really work in the writing, but it probably helps the performance somehow.
Well, and we'll see whether it solves the problem of a battle in a moment, because there may be some fighting to come. Lois, very briefly.
Oh, well, the dumb show could have covered the gap between Acts 1 and 2. Ophioneus, I think, does actually occur somewhere else, because Milton mentions him in Paradise Lost, something about that fires the length, comet, I think, that fires the length of Ophioneus huge in the Arctic sky. And I think that he foretells war. So it may be slightly less off the wall than it seems.
Mm.
I'm not sure what the source of this is, but Milton was probably biblical or something religious at any rate that Milton was drawing on.
Oh, I'm sure Chapman's found an authentically named demon.
Oh yeah,
and
I think
he's
all
got a
this has
biography.
this all must have scholarly sources. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's find out some more. I think we're going to find out in a much more straightforward way what's going on in the rest of the plot, as we have Act 2, Scene 2, enter Nuntius.
Now is the mighty empress of the earth, great Rome, fast locked up in her fancied strength. All broke in uproars, fearing the just gods in plagues will drown her so abused blessings, in which all without her walls fly in, by both their jarring champions rushing out, and those that were within as fast fly forth. The consuls, both, are fled, without one rite of sacrifice submitted to the gods, as ever heretofore their custom was, when they began the bloody frights of war, in which our two great soldiers, now encountering, since both left Rome, opposed in bitter skirmish, Pompey, not willing yet to hazard battle, by Cato's consul urging good cause, fled, which, firing Caesar's spirit, he pursued so home and fiercely that great Pompey, scorned in the heart, he took by his advised flight, despised advice as much as his pursuit. And, as in Libya an aged lion, urged from his peaceful covert, fears the light, with his unready and diseased appearance, gives way to chase a while and coldly haunts, till with the youthful hunter's wanton heat, he all his cool wrath frets into a flame. And then he sides, he swings with his stern to lash his strength up, lets down all his brows about his burning eyes, erects his mane, breaks all his throat in thunders, and to wreck his hunter's insolence, his heart ever barking, he frees his fury and turns and rushes back with such a ghostly horror that in heaps his proud foes fly, and he that station keeps, so Pompey calls spirits to put all their heat by Caesar's hard pursuit. He turned, fresh head, and flew up his foe with such a rapture as took up into furies all friends' fears, who, fired with his first turning, all turned head, and gave so fierce a charge their followers fled. Those instant ensue on both sides see, and after set out such a tragedy, as all the princes of the earth may come to take their patterns by the spirits of Rome.
Exit Nuntius, going straight into Act 2, Scene 3. Alarm, after which enter Caesar, followed by Crassinius calling to the soldiers.
Stay, foolish cowards! Fly ye Caesar's fortunes?
Forbear, Crassinius, we contend in vain to stay these vapours, and must raise our camp.
How shall we rise, my lord, but all in uproars, being still pursued?
Enter Acilius.
Pursuit stays, my lord. Pompey hath sounded a retreat, resigning his time to you, to use in instant raising your ill-lodged army, pitching now where fortune may good amends make for her fault today.
It was not fortune's fault, but mine, Acilius, to give my foe charge, being so near the sea, where well I knew the eminence of his strength, and should have driven the encounter further off, bearing before me such a goodly country, so plentiful and rich, in all things fit to have supplied my array's want with victuals, and the able cities too to strengthen it, of Macedon and Thessaly, where now I rather was besieged for want of food, than did assault with fighting force of arms.
Enter Antony, Vibius with others.
See, sir, here's one friend of your foes recovered.
Vibius, in happy hour!
For me unhappy,
What, brought against your will?
else had not come.
Sir, he's your prisoner, but had made you his, had all the rest pursued the chase like him. He drave on like a fury, past all friends but we, that took him quick in his engagement.
Oh, Vibius, you deserve to pay a ransom of infinite rate. For had your general joined in your addressin, or known how to conquer, this day had proved him the supreme of Caesar.
Known how to conquer. His 500 conquests achieved ere this day make that doubt unfit for him that flies him. For, of issues doubtful, who can at all times put on for the best? If I were mad, must he his army venture in my engagement? Nor are generals ever their powers disposers by their proper angels, but trust against them, oftentimes their counsels, wherein I doubt not Caesar self hath heard sometimes, as well as Pompey.
Or done worse, in disobeying my counsel, Vibius, of which this day's abused light is witness, by which I might have seen a course secure of this discomfiture.
Amends sits ever above repentance. What's done, wish not undone. But that prepared patience that you know best fits a soldier charged with hardest fortunes, ask still your use. Since powers still temperate kept, ope still the clearer eyes by one false sight, to place the next act in the surer right.
You prompt me nobly, sir, repairing in me mine own stay's practice, out of whose repose the strong convulsions of my spirits forced me thus far beyond my temper. But good Vibius, be ransomed with my love, and haste to Pompey, entreating him from me that we may meet. And for that reason, which I know this day was given by Cato for his pursuit's stay, which was prevention of our Roman blood, propose my offer of our hearty peace, that being reconciled and mutual faith given on our either part, not 3 days light may further show us foes, but both our armies dispersed in garrisons, we may return within that time to Italy, such friends as in our country's love contain our spleens.
'Tis offered, sir, above the rate of Caesar in other men, but in what I approve, beneath his merit, which I will not fail to enforce at full to Pompey, nor forget in any time the gratitude of my service.
Vibius salutes Antony and the other and exits.
Your love, sir, and your friendship.
This prepares a good induction to the change of fortune in this day's issue, if the pride it kindles in Pompey's veins makes him deny a peace so gently offered. For her altered hand works never surer from her ill to good. On his side she hath hurt, and on the other with other changes, than when means are used to keep her constant, yet retire refused.
I try no such conclusion, but desire directly peace. In mean space I'll prepare for other issue in my utmost means, whose hopes now resting at Brundusium, in that part of my army with Sabinus, I wonder he so long delays to bring me, and must in person haste him, if this even I hear not from him.
That, I hope, flies far your full intent, my lord, since Pompey's navy, you know, lies hovering all alongst those seas in too much danger, for what aid soever you can procure to pass your person safe.
Which doubt may prove the cause that stays Sabinus. And if, with shipping fit to pass your army, he yet strains time to venture, I presume you will not pass your person with such convoy of those poor vessels as may serve you here?
How shall I help it? Shall I suffer this torment of his delay, and rack suspicions worse than assured destructions through my thoughts?
Past doubt he will be here. I left all ordered and full agreement made with him to make all utmost haste, no least let once suspected.
Suspected? What suspect should fear a friend in such assured straits from his friend's enlargement? If 'twere his soldiers' safety he so tenders, were it not better they should sink by sea than rack their number, king and cause ashore? Their stay is worth their ruin, should we live, if they were in fault, if they in fault were. If their leader, he should die the deaths of all. In mean space I, that should not bear all. Fly the sight and shame, thou eye of nature and abortive night, fall dead amongst us. With defects must serve proportion. Justice can never be else restored, nor right the wrongs of man.
And they exit. This was the play we were expecting to get in when we went into Act 2. I hope you're happy now. There's, I think the shape of this scene is sort of fine. The Nuntius was sort of fine. I feel the Nuntius needs a bit of dumb show going on around it. But this scene also, I think, needs a trim. I think the idea is fine. I just think there's a little too much of it, which, oddly enough, I didn't feel about Act 1, even though people were making massive speeches. I felt they were sort of doing a thing, whereas here, I'm finding it a little more opaque as to what the hell is going on in terms of the precise beyond Pompey over there. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see an edition that has done its best to correct typos and punctuation and things which may well be wrong in the original text, because I think Chapman's manuscripts were always problematic. He never seems to have had time to revise properly, because some of those lines were absolutely unintelligible. I didn't know what I was saying some of the time. I mean, big generalizations, which seem to kind of refer to what's going on, but you're not quite sure they do. Everybody's trying to get some sort of moral message out of current events if they possibly can. But I think one thing that does come out again is that Caesar is actually rather impressive here. I mean, just saying it was not fortune's fault, but mine, Not many people come out with something like that.
A little bit of humility, or at least just realism, in that sense. He understands where he's at.
Yeah.
Okay, let's gather a little more data then as we'll fly over to the other side. Act 2, Scene 4. Enter Pompey, Cato, Gabinius, Demetrius, Athenodorus, Portius, and Statilius.
This charge of our fierce foe the friendly gods have in our strength and spirits beaten back with happy issue, and his forces lessened of 32 ensigns forced from him, 2,000 soldiers slain.
Oh, boast not that. Their loss is yours, my lord.
I boast it not, but only name the number.
Oh, I don't think I put out Gabinius. Anyone free? Anyone not doing anything? Anyone want to leap in? Aaron.
Sorry.
Which right well you might have raised so high that on their tops your throne was offered, ever to overlook subverted Caesar.
I apologize. No, it was Irene. It was Irene. I
That's
apologize.
me. Sorry,
yeah.
I just didn't mute myself.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Go back. Gabinius again.
Okay. Which right well you might have raised so high that on their tops your throne was offered, ever to overlook subverted Caesar. Yet had you been so blessed to give such honor to your captain's counsels as their alacrities did long to merit with a fruitful action.
Oh, 'twas ill neglected.
It was deferred with reason, which not yet the event so clear is to confute.
If 'twere, our likeliest then was not to hazard battle, the adventure being so casual, if compared with our more certain means to his subversion. For finding now our army amply stored with all things fit to tarry surer time, reason thought better to extend to length the war betwixt us, that his little strength may by degrees prove none. Which urged now, consisting of his best and a blessed soldiers, we should have found at one direct set battle of matchless valors their defects of victual, not tiring yet enough of their tough nerves, where, on the other part, to put them still in motion and remotion here and there, and forcing them to fortifying still wherever they set down to siege a wall. Keep watch all night in armor, their most part can never bear it, by their years' oppression, spent heretofore too much in those steel toils.
I so advised, and yet repent it not, but much rejoice in so much saved blood as had been poured out in the stroke of battle, whose fury thus prevented comprehends your country's good and empires. In whose care, let me beseech you, that in all this war you sack no city subject to our rule, nor put to sword one citizen of Rome. But when the needful fury of the sword can make no fit distinction in main battle, that you will please still to prolong the stroke of absolute decision to these jars, considering you shall strike it with a man of much skill and experience, and one that will his conquest sell at infinite rate, if that must end your difference. But I doubt there will come humble offer on his part of honoured peace to you, for whose sweet name so cried out to you in our late met senate. Lose no fit offer of that wished treaty. Take pity on your country's blood, as much as possible may stand without the danger of hindering her justice on her foes, which all the gods to your full wish dispose.
Going.
Why will you leave us? Whither will you go to keep your worthiest person in more safety than in my army so devoted to you?
My person is the least, my lord, I value. I am commanded by our powerful senate to view the cities in the kingdoms situate about your either army, that which side soever conquer, no disordered stragglers puffed with the conquest, or by need impelled, may take their swinge more than the care of one may curb and order in these neighbour confines. My chief pass yet resolves for Utica.
Your pass, my truest friend and worthy father, may all good powers make safe, and always answer your infinite merits with their like protection, in which I make no doubt but we shall meet with mutual greetings, and for absolute conquest or peace preventing that our bloody stroke. Nor let our parting be dishonoured so as not to take into our noblest notice yourself, Athenodorus, most learned and admired father, whose merits, if I live, shall lack no honour. Portius, Statilius, though your spirits with mine would highly cheer me, yet ye shall bestow them in much more worthy conduct. But love me, and wish me conquest for your country's sake.
Our lives shall seal our loves, sir, with worse deaths adventured in your service.
You are my friends.
Exeunt Cato, Athenodorus, Portius, Statilius.
These friends thus gone, 'tis more than time we minded our lost friend Vibius.
You can want no friends. See our two consuls, sir, betwixt them, bringing the worthy Brutus.
Enter two consuls leading Brutus betwixt them.
We attend, my lord, with no mean friend, to spirit your next encounter. 6,000 of our choice patrician youths brought in his conduct.
And though never yet he hath saluted you with any word or look of slenderest love in his whole life, since that long time since of his father's death, by your hand authored, yet see, at your need he comes to serve you freely for his country.
His friendly presence making up a third with both your persons, I as gladly welcome as if Jove's triple flame had gilt to this field, and lightened on my right hand from his shield.
I well assure myself, sir, that no thought in your ingenious construction touches at the aspersions that my tendered service proceeds from my despair of elsewhere safety, but that my country's safety, owing justly my whole abilities of life and fortunes, and you, the ablest factor of her safety, her love, and for your love of her, your own, only make sacred to your use my offering.
Far fly all other thought from my construction, and due acceptance of the liberal honour your love hath done me, which the gods are witness I take as stirred up in you by their favours, nor less esteem it than an offering holy, since as of all things man is said the measure, so your full merits measure forth a man.
Oh, see yet, my lord, more friends.
5 kings, your servants.
Enter 5 kings.
Conquest and all grace crown the gracious Pompey, to serve whom in the sacred Rome safely, myself, Iberia's king, present my forces.
And I that hold the tributary throne of Grecian Thessaly submit my homage to Rome and Pompey.
So Cilicia too.
And so Epirus.
Lastly, I from Thrace present the duties of my power and service.
Your royal aids deserve of Rome and Pompey our utmost honours. May now our fortune not balance her broad breast twixt 2 light wings, nor on a slippery globe sustain her steps. But as the Spartans say, the Paphian queen, in the flood of Rota's passing, laid aside her glass, her cestin, and her amorous graces, and in Lycurgus' favour armed her beauties with shield and javelin. So may fortune now, the flood of all our enemies' forces passing with her fair ensigns and arrived at ours, Displume her shoulders, cast off her winged shoes, her faithless and still rolling stones spurn from her, and enter our powers, as she may remain our firm assistant, that the general aids, favors, and honors you perform to Rome may make her build with you her endless home.
The gods
The gods
vouchsafe
vouchsafe
it,
it,
the cause is
the cause is right.
What sudden shade is this? Observe, my lord, the night methinks comes on before her hour.
Lightning and thunder.
Nor trust me if my thoughts conceive not so.
What thin clouds fly the winds like swiftest shafts along air's middle region?
They presage unusual tempests.
And 'tis their repair that time must darken as the gloomy air.
Let's force no omen from it, but avoid the vapor's furies now by Jove employed.
They exuent. Act 2, Scene 5. Thunder continues, and Caesar enters, disguised.
The wrathful tempest of the angry night, where hell flies muffled up in clouds of pitch, mingled with sulphur in those dreadful bolts the Cyclops ram in Jove's artillery, hath roused the Furies, armed in all their horrors, up to the envious seas, in spite of Caesar. O night, O jealous night, of all the noblest beauties and glories, where the gods have stroked their four digestions from thy ghastly chaos. Blush thus to drown them all in this hour, signed by the necessity of fate for Caesar. I that have ransacked all the world for worth to form in man the image of the gods, must like them have the power to check the worst of all things under their celestial empire, stoop it and burst it, or break through it all with use and safety, till the crown be set on all my actions, that the hand of nature in all her worst works aiming at an end, may in a masterpiece of hers be served with tops and state fit for his virtuous crown. Not lift arts thus far up in glorious frame, to let them vanish thus in smoke and shame. This river Anius, in whose mouth now lies a pinnace, I would pass in to fetch on my army's dull rest from Brundusium. That is at all times else exceeding calm, by reason of a purling wind that flies off from the shore each morning, driving up the billows far to sea in this night, yet bears such a terrible gale put off from sea, as beats the land wind back and thrusts the flood up in such uproar that no boat dare stir, and on it is dispersed all Pompey's navy, to make my peril yet more envious. Shall I yet shrink for all? For all yet more there is a certain need that I must give, way to my pass, none known that I must live.
Enter master of a ship with sailors.
What battle is there fought now in the air, that threats the wrack of nature?
Master, come, shall we thrust through it all?
What lost man art thou in hopes and fortunes that darest make so desperate a motion?
Launch, man, and all thy fears freight disavow. Thou carriest Caesar and his fortunes now.
And they exit. We have more portents. Signs and portents, lightning and thunder and the darkening of the skies. We have the two forces. Basically, this act is basically the two forces sort of squaring off, trying to figure out how to fight each other. Nothing is going particularly right everywhere. But yeah, I like the shape of this act. I just think it's not quite getting to the meat of it. I think there's a lot here that I think just a bit of a trim to give it a bit of a kick up the behind, and that sense of impending doom that all this thunder is putting forward. It's a very supernatural act, I suppose, if we include the demon at the beginning. So yeah, that's part of it. Lois.
Yeah, I think this could be extremely effective. And it's a pity that Chapman didn't get a better translation for Caesar's line about, I need to get across this river, I do not need to live. I mean, that's his basic argument. And that whole, incredibly desperate thing. There's also this big emphasis on Caesar's fortune. I mean, that fortune was supposed to be sort of going with him everywhere. Pompey mentions it in the first act. And here again, he first says, no, it wasn't fortune's fault that we just lost this battle, but you're carrying me and my fortune with you in this boat. Yeah, I think, it's put rather in a rather difficult way, but I think it could be made clearer in performance.
I mean, it's difficult because so much of this is about inaction. It's about, Pompey's got the seas and Caesar can't go anywhere and he's sort of hemmed in. Can he move? Can he actually get out to actually do some fighting? So no fighting's really going on, and then we have this exchange of prisoner, that's going on. There's attempts at peace and to have an actual conversation, but of course none of that's actually moving us anywhere, and that's quite dramatically difficult to demonstrate. So it's not just necessarily that Chapman is failing in a sense. It's a difficult, I think, bit of history to actually try and put on a stage in a dynamic way. And I think the shape there is reasonable. I just don't think he's quite carried it off. And I think the language has got more opaque, whereas I was going with it in Act 1. It's got really opaque. And yes, there are some textual issues that we've got here, but I think some filleting. I think some of it is actually salami edits here, just actually for sense rather than for time, because it's not a long play excessively, so it's not, especially if you cut the demon, it's even shorter. It's for a historical tragedy, which I suppose is what we could generically call it. That's what's going on. We have one more scene to do. Any other thoughts before we do it? I'm just wittering on. People are letting me. It's a terrible thing to do. Erin.
Well, there was some chat earlier about, Caesar being modest, and I think this speech shows he's not modest at all. He considers he's not saying, "Oh, I must have made a mistake." He's kind of cursing himself for, "Damn it, I wasn't as awesome as I'm supposed to be." He's holding himself accountable to his own legend, like saying, "I shouldn't make these mistakes. I am the great Caesar." I just pulled that out of that was something that jumped out at me in this particular speech. It kind of clarified that.
Lois, and then we'll move on.
Well, they all, in a sense, have already a notion of what they are. I mean, it's Cato saying earlier, "Let's behave like ourselves." Never mind what what are ourselves? They obviously mean our best selves, and I think both Caesar and Pompey have that sort of self view as well.
Okay, Act 3, Scene 1. Enter Pompey, 2 consuls, 5 kings, Brutus, Gabinius, and Demetrius.
Now to Pharsalia, where the smarting strokes of our resolved contention must resound. My lords and friends of Rome, I give you all such welcome as the spirit of all my fortunes. Conquests and triumphs now come for their crown, can crown your favors with and serve the hopes of my dear country to her utmost wish. I can but set up all my being to give so good an end to my forerunning acts. The powers in me that formed them having lost no least time since in gathering skill to better, but like so many bees, have brought me home the sweet of whatsoever flowers have grown in all the meads and gardens of the world. All which hath grown still as the time increased in which 'twas gathered, and with which it stemmed, so that what decay soever blood inferred might with my mind's store be supplied and cheered. All which in one fire of this instant fight I'll burn and sacrifice to every cinder in sacred offering to my country's love. And therefore, what event soever sort, as I no praise will look for, but the good freely bestow on all, if good succeed. So if adverse fate fall, I wish no blame. But the ill befallen me made my fortune's shame, not mine nor my fault.
We too well love Pompey to do him that injustice.
Who more thirsts the conquest than resolves to bear the foil?
Said Brutus like, give several witness all that you acquit me whatsoever fall.
Particular men particular fates must bear. Who feels his own wounds lest to wound another?
Who's Thessaly?
You're muted, Rob.
Sorry, I did just say all the lines and I was muted. Acting away to my heart's content. Leave him the worst, whose best is left undone. He only conquers whose mind still is won. Free minds like dice fall square, whate'er the cast.
Who on himself stole stands solely fast. He's never drowned whose mind fights still aloft.
Who cares for up or down when all's but thought?
All things events doth no man's power extend.
Since gods rule all, who anything would mend.
Ye sweetly ease my charge, yourselves unburthening. Returned not yet of our trumpets, sent to know of Vibius' certain state?
Not yet, my lord.
Too long protracts we all means to recover his person, quick or dead. I still think his loss served fate before we blew retreat, though some affirm him seen soon after fighting.
Not after, sir, I heard, but ere it ended.
He bore a great mind to extend our pursuit, which much further than it was, and served that day when you had, like the true head of a battle, led all the body in that glorious turn upon a far-off squadron that stood fast in conduct of the great Mark Antony, when all the rest were fled, so passed a man that in their tough receipt of him I saw him thrice break through all with ease, and pass as fair as he had all been fire and they but air.
He stuck at last yet in their midst, it seemed.
So have I seen a fire drake glide at midnight before a dying man to point his grave, and in it stick and hide.
He comes yet safe.
A trumpet sounds and enters before Vibius with others.
Ah, Vibius, welcome. What, a prisoner with mighty Caesar, and so quickly ransomed?
Aye, sir, my ransom needed little time either to gain agreement for the value or the disbursement, since in Caesar's grace we both concluded.
Was his grace so free?
For your respect, sir.
Nay, sir, for his glory. That's the main conquest he so surely builds on, whichever is forerun with petty fortunes. Take not effect by taking any friend from all the most my poor defense can make, but must be complete by his perfect own.
I know, sir, you more nobly rate the freedom he freely gave your friend than to pervert it so past his wisdom, that knows much too well the uncertain state of conquest, to raise frames of such presumption on her fickle wings, and chiefly in a loss so late and grievous. Besides, your forces far exceeding his whole power being but 22,000, and yours full 44,000 strong, for all which yet he stood as far from fear in my enlargement as the confident glory you please to put on him, and had his end in my so kind dismission, that as kindly I might solicit a sure peace betwixt you.
A peace is possible.
Come, do not show this wanton incredulity too much.
Believe me, I was far from such a thought in his high stomach. Cato prophesied then. What think my lords, our consuls, and friend Brutus?
An happy offer, an offer happy.
Lurid, plain, and hearty.
Aye, there's the true inspection to his prospect.
The strait of his perhaps may need a slight of some hid stratagem to bring him off.
The vices of a new forge to entrap me. I rest in Caesar's shades, walk his strowed paths, sleep in his quiet waves. I'll sooner trust Hibernian bogs and quicksands and hell-mouth take for my sanctuary, in bad parts that no extremes will better. Nature's finger hath marked him to me to take heed of him. What thinks my Brutus?
Is your best and safest.
This offered peace of his is sure a snare to make our war the bloodier, whose fit fear makes me, I dare not now, in thoughts mature that late incline me, put in use the counsel, know your noble father Cato parting gave me, whose much too tender shunning innocent blood this battle hazards now that must cost more.
It does, and therefore now no more defer it.
Say all men so.
We do.
I grieve ye do, because I rather wish to err with Cato than with the truth go of the world besides, but since it shall abide this other stroke, ye gods, that our great Roman genius have made not give us one day's conquest only, nor grow in conquest for some little time, as did the genius of the Macedons, nor be by land great only, like the Laconians, nor yet by sea alone, as was the Athenians, nor slowly stirred up like the Persian angel, nor rocked to sleep soon like the Ionian spirit, but made our Roman genius fiery, watchful, and even from Rome's prime joined his youth with hers. Grow as she grew, and firm as earth abide by her increasing pomp at sea and shore, in peace, in battle, against Greece as well as our barbarian foes, command yet further. Ye firm and just gods, our assistful angel for Rome and Pompey, who now fights for Rome, that all these royal laws to us in justice of common safety may the self-love drown of tyrannous Caesar, and my care for all your altars crown with endless festival.
And they exit, and the prisoner has been returned. And hey, do you want peace? And it's like, oh, well, maybe we do want peace. Do we want peace? He might be lying though. Yeah. Shall I do a long speech? Yeah. It's a good speech. I mean, this is the thing. It's actually some of them, when they're doing speechifying, actually they are quite good speeches. They are. It's actually when they're just trying to talk to each other that sometimes it feels like we just lose the thread a bit because we're not doing rhetoric, and that's quite interesting. So it's this problem of depicting in action. Actually, again, that they're not quite in a position to fight each other in an open and obvious way, and someone's asking for peace. I mean, God, does anyone want peace? We don't want to play about peace, do we? That's so boring. I want to watch Romans hacking each other to bits. Spoiler alert, you might get that soon. Mark.
In the scene where Caesar was with Vibius, and said, like, go get peace, it was unclear to me at that point whether he was being sincere. I wasn't quite picking up on what the play was trying to make us think about, whether he's sincerely wanting peace or if Pompey is correct and that it's a trap.
Yeah, it does seem to be there is a thing with actually various Caesars at various points of going, is this disingenuous or not? Is this a genuine thing or not? And I wonder if that's actually a thread or just a thing that any ruler, can you be really sure what they're actually planning? I mean, he might take peace, but what price peace? He's never going to let Pompey live, is he? Really? I doubt it. Lois, then Lynn.
Well, in that earlier scene, I think somebody, it might be Antony, says, he's probably going to turn this down, and then that will make us look even better. But I mean, Caesar, I think, was notorious for being relatively merciful, as in the way he treats Vibius, whom obviously he could have at least put a high ransom on. And it's partly just, I think, wrong footing the other side. But he's presumably doing it because peace at this point wouldn't be bad for him, since he's just lost a battle anyway. And it would, as the other side thinks, give him time to regroup. But on the other hand, if it's turned down, it also puts him on the moral high ground.
There's so many options for fighting a civil war. Who knew? Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like what's going on with Vibius, I think that it is a trap, but that Vibius has fallen for it. He's convinced. Caesar has charmed him into believing, he's going to do the honorable thing. He's going to want to reduce bloodshed. So, Vibius buys it, but Pompey knows better. My take on that.
Yeah. We're approximately halfway through the play, depending on whether you cut the demon or not, of which I am deeply torn. It has to be said. I don't think we've necessarily hit a good interval point. We may hit one the beginning of next session, but that's always one of the things I'm thinking about. But if we cut the demon, and again, very torn about cutting the demon, then that does actually give us a little more play for how far we go on before we would perhaps put an interval in. This doesn't feel necessarily like an interval moment, but it could function as one. It sort of does maybe we'll have, and it's a stirring speech, so I suppose you could go for a sharp blackout end there. But it's the sense of the flow of the action. Certainly Act 2 going into Act 3. Is quite tricksy in terms of getting a sense of what the show would look like as a show. Lois.
Yeah, I didn't read the next scene, but it looks short enough that you could possibly put the break at the end of that, because the point seems to be the two armies preparing for the famous Battle of Pharsalia, which was one of the decisive battles of the Western world. So quite a good point at which to put an interval.
Yes, and that's the question. We'll be able to resolve that next time. But yeah, just in terms of that shape of the action, I don't think we're quite at the point where we'd put an interval in. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say with certainty what shape a show would look like with this, but I have to say the basic shape is fine. I think there's a lot of salami edit and tweaks to do. I think with a tighter text and a better idea of what the text is doing, it sort of is functioning, but it does require a massive cast. Or at least it sort of does. I mean, think about actually how many people have got the primary speeches, how many people are doing the primary action. It's actually relatively small, but there are quite a lot of supernumeraries required to keep that flow. And that first act, I think, really needs those bodies, because otherwise I don't think it has that impact if it's just a couple of people having an argument, which is sort of what otherwise it would be. Lynn?
Yeah, my sense is you are going to need a big cast. I mean, had I but known, I would have gotten out some funny voices. But I was like 3 different people in this last scene. You know, I'm a Consul, I'm Vibius, I'm Demetrius. None of whom have like a massive amount to do, but they can't in reality be on stage at the same time.
No.
So
And it's quite difficult even to have the 2 factions doubled, just run off and change hats. It's actually quite difficult to do that with this schema, because there isn't a B plot with a clown all the way through, which would give everyone a chance to get changed. You know, if that clown plot was sustained on some level, so maybe we should write more clown. Maybe clown stuff. I mean, I have to say, I'm thinking of the clown, as Alan said earlier, in isolation. It would make an interesting episode for the podcast. It would make an interesting sort of pre-show warm-up thing for our actors for other shows to just play around with it. I think I can agree with it probably needs to go from a production, but I'd like to do it once. Just to see what it does. Lois?
Well, just a point that it seems to me that Chapman definitely wants each of the 3 principal characters, I mean, Caesar, Pompey, and Cato, to have a small group of followers or advisors around him. And that automatically is going to take the cost up to, fairly large. And they probably ought to be distinguished by their clothes or something. I mean, it's clear that there are these 3 guys that are always with Cato, since Caesar reluctantly, or Pompey reluctantly says goodbye to them when he decides to leave. He knows they're going. And I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, just about everybody except Vibius seems to have a definite location. Something I think is rather curious is the way that Brutus arrives, and nobody ever says, "Here's Brutus," do they? I mean, he just comes on, and somehow you're supposed to know who he is.
I think he is signposted a little bit, but it's not a massive appellation. I do think they do say his name. I do think it crops out.
Yeah, it seems to be confusing in there, and especially this bit about and you killed his father, didn't you, or something like that.
That was a bit weird.
Yeah.
Even though you killed his father, he thinks you're right, and he's come to join you, I guess.
Yeah.
This is the other problem of which can be solved, of course, by doing this as part of a season, is of course the Roman soap opera problem, which is if you don't quite know who some of these how they're related to each other, or how they are politically as well as literally related to each other, and what previous generations have done to your family. That is quite helpful. But if you're doing a season, you do Catiline, you do some of the other plays around this. We've had recent experience at time recording of what you do when you do different accounts of history on top of each other, is that it's actually quite satisfying, even when there are differences. Final thoughts. A lot of people in the room, so keep them relatively brief. You're allowed not to have any, of course. You can just want to move on. Mark, do you have any final thoughts about the play so far?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff in here. I think there are some good speeches. The Act 2 Scene 1, I think it was the clown bit with the demon, was interesting, but yeah, if it doesn't go anywhere for the rest of the play, I do feel like it's hard to do much with it. But yeah, I think there's some good meat here and there at the very least.
Yeah, actually, just a quick show of hands. Did anyone find the clown, the demon, actually funny? Hands up. One. Because that's my other objection, is that I'm sort of going, I know this is a clown. Structurally. But I wasn't finding him desperately funny. That's not to say it can't be done, and there isn't laughs there, but I'm not sure actually it also quite does what it says on the tin, or at least not for us today, perhaps. Sarah, I'll go into your final thoughts as well.
Yeah, I did not find him funny, but I did find him entertaining. And my problem as a final thought with this is that although I am kind of enjoying it and I think it's well structured, and some of the big speeches are great, but my problem is that my mind keeps wandering to Sicily. I want to go and hang out with the dragon demon and the new Lord Chief Censor of Sicily and find out what shenanigans they get up to. Like, and this was my fear at the end of that scene, like that, you know, having put that in there, and this is why I think, you know, it would be judicious to cut it, because it sets up a whole other story that is actually, to me at least, has the potential to be more entertaining than this one. This has a kind of monumental quality to it. It's like he's been looking at too many white marble Roman statues. And so while he's really good at doing the rhetoric, you know, the big speeches, when these people actually have to come down off their plinths and talk to each other and be three-dimensional and colourful, I don't know. I don't know what's happened, because I know Chapman can do chat, but he's just not doing it here.
I think they seem to function really well in the Senate, but the Civil War is oddly not very interesting.
It's not.
Once they actually start having the Civil War, and it is frustrating, because you can sort of feel it almost there, and it's just like, can I trim and give it pace?
I think you could. You could give it more momentum, and I think the other thing that's missing is because you know, he's bound by history, and so there's this sense of, oh well, okay, is there going to be peace? Is there not going? You know, and it's like, okay, we can't actually fight yet, and do. But it's almost as though he needs to put something else in. To sort of, he needs to put in a B plot or an extra, you know, character who can create some suspense, because they are suspended at the moment, like physically they're suspended. There's no fighting, and so we then need to create a sense of suspense within the audience, like, oh, is there going to be a traitor? Is someone going to betray someone else? What's happening? And there isn't that to kind of
it's fundamentally different from, say, an English history play, where you will probably have a subplot that involves a character who doesn't exist in history. It does seem they don't do this with Roman
They don't
plays.
do it, and they should.
Apart from this one scene. This is the only scene I can think of where it's completely divorced from history. I mean, for all I know, maybe there was a demon. I don't know. Anyway, we must move on. Erin, any final thoughts?
I one question which I think the play will answer. I can't tell if Caesar's winning or losing at this point. Like, he's sneaking around and suing for peace, so I get the sense he's losing. But that's also why people don't trust him. And the only other random thought I had, I'm trying to find out, is it possible there is some other play with this character that was meant, like, this is meant to be like a showpiece of a character, like, hey, and then I've got this one, and they're going to do Sicily in this other play. That's the only other thought I had for, like, why there's this one-off character in the middle of a show.
I have no knowledge of a Fronto extended universe, but I like the idea. Irene, any final thoughts?
No.
Excellent. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming back to that clown scene, it feels to me like very much like it's talking to a London audience of the time.
Oh yeah, it's what clowns do.
I mean, it reminded me a little bit of Ben Elton in the 1980s. You know, the rant against lawyers and moneylenders and whatever. You know, which is a timeless starting point for satirical comment. But it's not laugh out loud funny.
Yes, possibly also like Ben Elton in the 1980s. Anyway, discuss. Connor, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasant read, some really good speeches and interesting parts, but it's something about it's just not really grabbing me. in the way that, it's epic and everything else, but it's just not quite grabbing me. So I'm looking forward to the second part tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'll see a route through. I'll see a way for the grabbage. But, I'm worried about putting an interval in yet because I'm worried we might not get a second half. Aliki, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also not quite grabbed by it, although I could see some really enjoyable bits. I do like the idea of a Roman soap opera season, so for that alone, I'm for it.
Yeah. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm still really struggling with the language. Maybe I'm just too lazy to make the effort to follow the syntax this morning. That's entirely possible. That seems likely, in fact. But it's just like it's not repaying the effort to follow it. One thing I do think is interesting, though, is that we know Caesar wins. We know, and we know he's going to be spoilers.
No, it's all right. I think it's not a spoiler to say he wins.
It happened more than 2,000 years ago. I think we're okay.
Yeah, and even you didn't have to be highly educated in early modern London to know the rough outlines of Roman history, because England sort of saw itself as the new Rome. Anyway, so we know that most of the alliance knew that Caesar wins in the end, although and then gets assassinated. But the play is really making an effort to make Pompey look like the one who has more personal integrity, who's more concerned about Rome and not about his own glory. And Caesar, we don't quite trust him. So, I mean, I think that's interesting, is that it's not making Caesar the good guy, really, at all.
Yeah, I feel more ambiguous about the characters, actually. I think they're all vying for power. They're all problematic on some level.
Yeah.
Just maybe one slightly less problematic than others. But
but we're not. It's not making Caesar the hero, which I think is interesting.
Lois, any additional final thoughts?
Well, yeah, of course, alas. Yeah, I mean, one reason that Caesar is depicted rather unfavorably is that I think the source of this is mainly Lucan's Pharsalia, which is very pro-Pompey. And in fact, this is much less pro-Pompey than that. Probably because Chapman had read so much Roman history and was giving, in fact, a more balanced view. I happen to like Roman history and Roman plays, and so I rather enjoy as far as I can follow it. I mean, some of this is really a mess, I think, either because of the original text or the punctuation, at any rate. But I find it really quite interesting, the amount of detail that's gone into the reasoning of the different characters. I mean, it is miles too long. I suspect that Chapman may have written other scenes with Fronto and Ophioneus that got left out, which is quite possible given what a mess his manuscripts seem to have been in, or that he started writing them and then somebody said, no, we're going to cut this anyway, but nevertheless it got into his final manuscript. I mean, who knows? But it doesn't seem to me likely that he would write something like that without intending to continue it. And there is the fact that it is tied in with the play, in that Fronto is to become a flamen, which is a Roman priest. He doesn't know what the word means, but Ophioneus does. And that can only be because it's meant to go into a play about Roman history. It's not a freestanding thing.
Yeah. So we will try to unpack more of these questions and issues, and try to see what we can do to get this civil war going. All that remains is thank all the wonderful readers for all your wonderful reading. You too out there can join us. There are sign-up forms on our website, beyondshakespeare.org. You can always join us. We do this several times a week. And yes, you too can be in a little box, all of your very own, and say words and have opinions. All that remains is thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye, this past helping pickle.